Hi there everyone and welcome back to the channel. Today's video is going to be a bind and fly review of this little guy. This is the Newbeedrone SavageBee Pusher. It's a 2S 3-inch HD toothpick with the DJI O3 Air Unit, and it's designed for capturing stunning HD aerial footage in a very small and lightweight platform. In this video, I'm going to be taking you through all the specs and features of this bind and fly on the bench. I'm going to be taking it for a fly and showing you some flight footage, and we're going to be looking at the Betaflight configuration and also the Blackbox log analysis for this little frame to see how it performs. It's a lot to cover in one video, so let's not waste any more time. Let's dive right into it and find out if this drone is right for you. If at any point during the video you decide you want to pick up the Newbeedrone SavageBee for yourself, then I'll put links to where you can get it down in the video description. And they are affiliate links that help support me to make more videos like this. It won't cost you anything to use them, so please do use them if you can and help support the channel. Alright, so let me take you through all the key features of this little guy on the bench. And there is a lot going on here in a small package. Up front we have the DJI O3 camera, and that's mounted on a flexible TPU camera mount here. The props are Gemfan 3018, they're 3-inch bi-blade props, and they're being driven by the Newbeedrone Flow 1202 motors, and these have 11,400 kV, so they're perfect for 2S battery voltage, driving these 3-inch bi-blade props. The flight controller is the Newbeedrone BeeBrain HD G4 flight controller, and this has a 20 amp ESC, it's rated for up to 2S battery voltage, and it has a Diversity Express ELRS 2.4 GHz receiver. You can see that we have two antennas mounted off the front two arms here. And then it's also got a BEC for the DJI O3 HD system. So the DJI O3 Air Unit is actually sitting underneath the drone here, and that's what the drone sits on. It's encased in this pretty thick 3D printed mount to provide it some protection, and the drone kind of sits on top of the Air Unit mount like that. The VTX antennas for the O3 Air Unit are run out to the rear arms and connected to these little whip-style antennas, and you've got two whip-style antennas for the two antenna outputs of the O3 Air Unit. At the back, we have a Micro M10 GPS module. This is the Newbeedrone Micro M10Q GPS module, and it includes a compass as well as a GPS as well, and that's connected through to the flight controller. And this gives this little toothpick GPS functionality like return to home, ground speed, all of that sort of stuff. Now let's talk about the frame of this little drone. It's composed of a single piece main plate that's 3mm thick and a single piece top plate that's 2mm thick. These are separated by 7 M2 by 10mm standoffs, 5 spaced around the flight controller and 2 up front beside the camera. As you can see from the design of this frame, it's incredibly lightweight and skeletal. We have these thin little struts coming out to the motors and another thin stiffening strut going from the front arm to the camera mounting. What I can say is that this frame is clearly designed for applications where you are not going to crash the drone. This drone will weigh anywhere from 130 to 150 grams when you add on the battery. And if you were to crash a 150 gram drone on a frame like this with these 2mm wide struts by 3mm deep, they are very likely to break. And because it's a single piece construction, any damage to any of the arms is going to necessitate a complete rebuild of the drone. So definitely for applications where you are not going to crash. The benefit of this type of design is a very long flight time for the type of drone that it is. So you'll get a long flight time and a long hovering time with a given size of battery because the frame weight is very, very low. So do bear that in mind when you're deciding what you want to do with this drone. In terms of weight, the drone comes in at 104.1 grams dry, and with a typical 750 milliamp hour 2S battery, that's going to bring it up to 140 grams. If you're enjoying this video, please don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button, and maybe leave a comment down below or a question. It really helps me know that these are the types of videos that I should be making, and it also helps support me to make more videos like this for all of you. Now let's go and take this drone for a fly to capture some black box logs and some flight footage. Now, I promised you we were going to have a look at the tune and some Blackbox logs from this bind and fly. And you may or may not know that the BeeBrain G4 HD doesn't have a Blackbox chip. So how on earth are we going to get Blackbox logs to analyze? Well, that's where this little guy comes in. This is the AirBot Open Logger, and it allows you to log over a serial port from your flight controller and take Blackbox logs onto an SD card like this. This is what we're going to be using to take logs on the Newbeedrone SavageBee. All right, so let's take a look at the Blackbox log. And you can see here I am taking off, and then I am doing just some wiggles on the roll axis. And the first thing I notice here is that the gyro is lagging just a little bit behind the set point on these sharp roll moves. So it doesn't look like we've got much feed forward or any feed forward at all on this drone. So that's why we're getting a bit of lag. And also the D term is quite active actually in these moves. You can see it's kind of wiggling up and down a little bit. It's this yellow line. If we move on a little bit further in the log, yeah, okay, so this is an example of D term trilling. So we've got too much D term in the tune, and you can see that just for no reason really, it's just suddenly starting to oscillate, and then the oscillations are dying away when I change throttle, something like that. This can be to do like a mid-throttle oscillation where you're just hitting a resonant frequency of the frame with the throttle position, and then suddenly the D term is beginning to self-oscillate or trill like that. And you can see it's happening on both the roll and the pitch axis. So both axes are trilling. So that indicates that we do have too much D term in the tune. It's happening again and again. Yeah, it's happening quite a lot during this log, and again you can see the motors go crazy during these D term trills. So this can cause a lot of motor heating. It's probably not a problem with really small motors like this. They tend to be very tolerant, but if you're seeing stuff like this in the logs, that means your D term is just way too high. Now I've got some movements on the pitch axis, and same as what we saw on the roll axis, we can see that the pitch axis is lagging quite a bit behind the set point. Not surprising really, given that the D term is so high. That's going to be kind of slowing the response of the quad to movements on both pitch and roll. Yeah, same is true for all of these little kind of wiggle moves that I'm doing. They're all delayed. And we also see the D term is still kind of wiggling, trying to oscillate even during these moves. So yeah, just too much D term. And the PD balance doesn't look correct either because we're lagging so much behind. You can also see, actually, I just noticed, do you see how the blue gyro trace is not reaching the level of the set point? So I'm commanding a certain amount of roll, and I'm not getting that much roll. I'm getting a little bit less on the gyro. So that indicates that the PD balance is wrong, that we don't have enough P term, we've got too much D term. So then you see that the oscillation in the gyro, the movement of the gyro trace, is less than the movement of the set point. That indicates incorrect PD balance. Now let's take a look at the vibration and resonance performance of the frame. So let's have a look at the unfiltered gyro on the roll axis. I'll turn the luminosity up a bit so we can see what's going on. So yeah, overall the frame is very quiet, which is good to see. It's a very small frame, so we wouldn't expect there to be too much vibration. You can see we've got 2 bands of motor noise here, which are due to the bi-blade props that we're using, and that we do have the most kind of noise power at around that kind of 250 hertz level, anywhere from about 230 up to about 300 hertz. So there might be a frame resonance in here, and certainly from the D term trilling that we were seeing in the logs, that could indicate that when the throttle position is just hitting that frame resonance, we're getting that D term trilling because there's not enough D term filtering, or the D term is too high. If we look at the pitch axis, again we see maybe a little frame resonance down here at about 190 hertz. Again, the 2 broad sweeps of motor noise, and maybe another little resonance at something like 240 hertz. But yeah, overall this is still pretty quiet. And on the yaw axis, as we would expect, yeah, the flight controller is well mounted. This is nice and quiet, and we don't see any example of frame resonances. Now let's take a look at the D terms for pitch and roll. So we'll start with the D term on roll, I guess. Okay. Yep, so Yeah, a lot of D-term noise power at low frequencies. So this potentially is probably the D-term oscillation, this huge spike here, but we're still getting a lot of noise on the D-term all the way up to, well, over 300 hertz. So that suggests maybe we need to have a look at the D-term filtering. I'll check that when I look at the tune in the Betaflight configurator, but we might not have enough filtering on the D-term. For the roll axis, let's check it out on pitch. Yeah, same story on pitch. In fact, we're getting actually a hump of D-term noise power at about 190 hertz, which is probably that frame resonance that we were looking at earlier. So there is a frame resonance at 190 hertz, and it is getting through into the D-term because we've not got perhaps enough D-term filtering, and a lot of D-term noise power at low frequencies, which suggests that the D-term is too high and there may not be enough filtering. So lots to look at here. So having looked at the Blackbox logs, I think what we can say is that the tune on this drone could really benefit from a little bit of TLC. And unfortunately, I think this is a really good example of what happens when you try and PID and filter tune a drone without any Blackbox logging. It's kind of like trying to play darts while you're blindfolded. It's never going to go well. So let's take a look at the Betaflight configuration now and see what we can change or tweak to try and improve things. All right, so let's take a look at the Betaflight configuration, starting with the configuration tab. So we got a PID loop frequency of 4K, which is correct for a G4 flight controller, FPV camera angle of 0, and a maximum arm angle of 90 degrees. I usually just set this to 180 so that it will always arm. All the modes look sensible, but we don't have any D-shot beacons set. Now, this drone doesn't have a beeper, and if you don't have D-shot beacons set, that means there's no way to make the craft beep, which means that if you go down in long grass, or you lose video, the likelihood of you being able to find the drone is drastically reduced. So I would set this to 3 and turn both of these on, and I would strongly suggest you do the same. You don't want your first flight to be your last flight because you go down in long grass and you just can't find the drone because you can't make it beep. So definitely set these and then hit save and reboot. Now let's take a look at the PID tuning tab, and I can already see that there's a lot to unpack here. This is a really bizarre set of PID tuning parameters. We have enormous amounts of D-gain, enormous amounts of master multiplier. So that's what's causing the D-term trilling that we're seeing. It's just the D-gains are way too high. We have even more D-gain on pitch than we do on roll. And also the PD balance is going to be thrown off completely by the fact that we've got massive D-gain, but we've not increased our P gains at all. So that throws off the PD balance and causes the curves where the gyro doesn't reach the level of the set point, where the amplitude isn't the same. So we're going to need to make some adjustments here. If we have a look to the rest of the page, the Dmax, I would always set the advance on the dynamic damping to 0, and the dynamic idle value, we haven't got a dynamic idle set, we always should have, and for a 3-inch drone it should be around 60. So we'll set that. We haven't got any VBAT sag compensation, which we probably should have because we're using a little 2S battery. We'll see a lot of voltage sag. And thrust linearization, it's probably okay not to worry about that. For smaller drones, sometimes it can be beneficial to add it. Everything else looks reasonable because it's close to the Betaflight defaults, so I'll hit save on that. I'm going to have to come back to these sliders and try and figure out a sensible tune for this quad later. Looking at the filters, okay, so yeah, so the filters actually are pretty sensible. We have two gyro notches, we have one dynamic notch. That's right. The gyro low pass filters are both set. On a tiny drone like this, we shouldn't need gyro low pass 1, and gyro low pass 2 should be able to be set to 2. So that gives a cutoff of 1000 hertz, which is an anti-aliasing filter for the 4K PID loop. The D-term filters are default and therefore going to be absolutely fine. So we'll hit save on that. So the filters are okay. They had more gyro filtering than necessary, but it's the PID settings that are the main issue here that we're going to need to adjust. Hi there everyone, Chris from the future here. I was able to go back and sort out that PID tune, so I put a CLI snip down in the video description. You can just apply this over your stock config and it will change the dynamic idle, the D-shot beacon, the PID and feed forward settings and the thrust linearization to be more suitable for the drone. So hopefully that will help sort out any tuning issues that you might have. So who is the Newbeedrone SavageBee pusher going to be right for? Well, if you're in the market for a small, lightweight and quiet HD toothpick for gentle cruising and very light freestyle, then I think this could be a really good option. It's got a great feature set, including that addition of the GPS for return to home, which is nice to see. And although the stock tune has some issues, you can fix that just by applying my diff that's down in the video description. So I can't really hold that against it. If you're looking for something for more aggressive freestyle, flying faster in close proximity to objects or over hard surfaces, then honestly, I can't recommend this drone for that. I just think it's going to be too fragile. I think you're too likely to break an arm with those very, very thin struts. If, however, you think that you're not going to be crashing all that much, and you want to pick up the Newbeedrone SavageBee pusher for yourself, there are links down in the video description to where you can get hold of the drone today, and they are affiliate links which help support me to make more videos like this for all of you and help produce tunes and all of that kind of stuff to just help improve your experience with all the drones that you're flying. So please do use those links if you can. They're down in the video description, and pick up one of these today. That's all I have for you for today. So until next time, I wish you all very, very happy flying.